Aatrox is an incredibly strong top laner in today's meta. He's a champion that can bully the majority of top laners that you'll end up playing against since you have really high damage as well as some pretty decent mobility. Even most ranged champions won't be safe against a solid Aatrox player. You're gonna have some very high damage and outplay potential when you start acquiring your items. You'll also have great engage and dive potential as well since you have a knockup on your Darken Blade that you can use 3 separate times as well as an ability to pull back your enemy. You'll then be able to activate your World Ender to gain even more stats and also be able to resurrect as long as you're able to get a takedown on an enemy champion during it, acting as pretty much a built-in guardian angel. He's a champion that's got pretty much everything you could dream about having in a champion's kit, and when played well, he's insanely hard to deal with. He is receiving a few small nerfs in the upcoming patch, but he will remain one of the top tier champions. Although Aatrox is a very strong champion, he does come with his weaknesses. He is a champion that can be somewhat hard to come back on when you fall behind because you do have the majority of your power in your early and your mid game. He will start to fall off in the later stages of the game, so you'll need to abuse your very strong early and mid game and get a lead against the enemy team and snowball until you're out of control and unstoppable. You are also a champion that has some very long cooldowns early on in the game, so you'll have to be careful when you use them and make sure you're landing them and making them count. It won't be too bad when you get some points in your abilities as well as a 20% cooldown reduction from the Black Cleaver, but both of these will take time to acquire. Aatrox is also a fairly high skill cap champion and it will take you a long time to get used to. Your Darken Blade ability is rather unique and it can feel somewhat clunky as well, and it will take some time to learn how to land it consistently. When you can, however, Aatrox starts becoming a powerhouse. The more mobile champions may be something you will struggle against because the majority of your Darken Blades will be very hard to land and knock up the target. Therefore, you probably want to wait until their mobility is in cooldown and then go for trades afterwards. For your rune setup, you'll want to run Conqueror as your keystone. This keystone is going to give you some nice stacking attack damage which stacks up to 5 times. This is going to add even more damage into your trades and make your damage output pretty insane. When you do reach 5 stacks, 8% of your damage will also be converted into true damage, and you'll also heal for that damage as well, getting some nice sustain. I then like to pick up Triumph so I get 12% of my missing health and 20 extra gold on champion takedowns. This will be really strong in teamfights since you will get a big chunk of health on takedowns and be able to move on to other targets. Next, you want to move on by getting Legend Tenacity. This rune will give you some permanent tenacity on takedowns, which will help you move around fights a lot easier since crowd controls won't last as long. Then finish up by getting Coup de Grace. This will help you execute targets that are below 40% health. In some situations, this may add just enough damage to help you finish off low health targets. For my secondary runes, I like to go into Resolve and get Bone Plating and Revitalize. Bone Plating will be really strong to reduce the damage of 3 attacks when procced, and Revitalize will make heals even stronger, which is great because you have passive lifesteal and you will build a Death's Dance. You could instead go for Domination as well and pick up some sustain there, but usually you will get a lot more from the Bone Plating and Revitalize. For your summoner spells, you want to go for Flash and then take either Teleport or Ignite. Flash is easily the best summoner spell on Aatrox because you can use it to close a gap on a target in offensive situations or use it as a way to escape if caught out in a bad position. It's also a really great way to help land your Darken Blade as well to make sure you pop up a target. Teleport is then going to be a really great option for Aatrox because you'll be able to put a lot of pressure out on the map. You can use it just to get back to lane quicker if you're going to miss minions, or use it to teleport gank and help other lanes that need you. If you're instead looking to get an easier time snowballing in the top lane, you could always go for Ignite. You're not going to have as much map pressure when you take Ignite over Teleport, but you will instead have added damage to help you bring down that enemy top laner, so you can try to get a lead that way. Now, as for your abilities, you'll want to try to hit the enemy with your empowered auto attack from Deathbringer's stance whenever it's off cooldown. It has a 15-second static cooldown, so use it pretty much whenever it is up. This empowered attack will gain 50 bonus range and deal damage between 5 and 12% of the target's maximum health as bonus physical damage. Aatrox will also heal himself for the bonus damage dealt. It will be reduced by 2 seconds whenever you hit an enemy champion with an ability or an attack, so try to harass the enemy and reduce the cooldown to use this more often. Your Darken Blade will deal damage in a line when activated and can be reactivated twice more within 4 seconds. The second cast will strike enemies in a cone, and the third will deal damage in a circle. All 3 of these deal AoE damage, but you'll want to try to hit the enemy in a certain part of the zone for an added knockup effect and 50% more damage. On the first and second cast, it will be at the far end of the zone, and on the third cast, it will be instead in the center of the zone. Always remember that you can use either Umbral Dash or Flash to get the enemy in the bonus zone whenever needed. When you activate your Infernal Chains, you'll smash the ground in the target direction, dealing physical damage, slowing, and attaching a chain to the first enemy champion hit. If this enemy remains in the chain impact area for 1.5 seconds, they'll be dragged to the center of the zone and take the same physical damage a second time. This is a really solid ability to combo with Darken Blade because you'll be able to know where the enemy will be dragged to in advance, so you can land the bonus zone from Darken Blade much easier. It has a range of 825 as well, making it great for engaging from a distance. Umbral Dash is another really strong part of your kit. It has a really nice passive to it that will heal you for between 20 and 30% of the non-periodic damage you deal against champions, giving Aatrox some really solid sustain. Umbral Dash will also be able to be activated to dash in the target direction. This is another very strong ability to use with Darken Blade because you will be able to use it after casting Darken Blade to position the enemy in the bonus zone of the ability so you can get that extra damage and knock up your target. It is also worth noting that this will reset your auto attack timer as well, so even in situations where you just need 2 quick autos, it's great in those. Your ultimate World Ender is a very strong stat steroid. You'll gain between 60 and 100% bonus movement speed, 20 to 30% bonus attack damage, and increase all your healing by between 40 and 75%. Aatrox is going to be a hell of a lot stronger when he has this ability activated, and you should try to use it whenever you're going into a fight if it is off cooldown. Whenever you do end up getting a kill with World Ender, the duration will be extended by 5 seconds. If at least one champion is taken down, Aatrox will also resurrect upon taking lethal damage as long as World Ender is still activated. He will revive over 3.25 seconds and become untargetable, but be slowed by 99% and heal for 30% of his maximum health over that duration. For your skill order, you first want to put a point into your ultimate whenever possible at 6, 11, and 16. Next, focus on maxing your Q ability as quickly as possible. This is your main source of damage outside of your auto attacks and deals some really nice AoE damage, which is great for clearing up minion waves and harassing the enemy champion. Next, follow up by maxing your E ability. This will give you some increased mobility with that lower cooldown and also has some scaling amplified healing. This means, of course, that you will want to max your W ability last, but make sure you take a point early on in it at level 3 so you can use it to slow the enemy and pull them in, making landing your Darken Blade a lot easier. During the lane phase, you'll first want to try to hit level 2 before the enemy top laner, if possible. This will give you a lot of kill potential right off the bat, since you'll be able to damage and knock up the target 3 separate times while being able to use Umbral Dash to position the enemy inside those knockups and also reset your auto attack timer. Aatrox is a very strong lane bully, so you should be trying to trade against the majority of champions. Use the high damage and knockup from Darken Blade to bully the enemy throughout the lane phase, and use the Umbral Dash to reposition when needed. Your empowered passive auto attack should also be used when it comes off cooldown to deal a large chunk of damage and also give you some nice sustain. Warding will also be an important part of your lane phase. Keep the lane warded as much as you can with the warding totem, and you should probably invest in a control ward as well to keep up that vision. Once you do shove your lane, you should also look for opportunities to roam. You can go into the enemy jungle and try to pick off the enemy jungler, or make a quick roam down to the mid lane. If you did end up taking teleport ganks are also going to be an option, so keep your eyes on the minimap and try to help your teammates. When teamfighting on Aatrox, the first thing you'll want to do is consider frontlining for your team. This is generally going to be a good idea if you're the only somewhat durable champion on your team. Use your Darken Blade and Infernal Change to apply crowd control to the enemy team and help keep the enemy off your carries in the backline. Diving onto the enemy backline will usually also be a great option for you, especially if you've managed to snowball. You can activate your World Ender and use that bonus movement speed to help you get onto the backline. Try and pop up a squishy target with your Darken Blade and Umbral Dash combo and quickly remove them from the fight with the rest of your Darken Blade and auto attacks. After you have managed to win a team fight, it's time to take even more. Don't just settle for the gold you received from the kills. Quickly work with your team to take a dragon, towers, inhibitors, baron, or possibly even the game. Take full advantage of the enemy team being dead and snowball the game as much as possible. Aatrox is one of the strongest top laners in the entire game and doesn't have a lot of hard matchups. There are a few bruisers that would be skill matchups, however, and they do have a solid chance to beat you. This would be champions like Fiora, Riven, and Urgot. Fiora will be looking to riposte your stuns and stun you instead, so you have to be very careful of this. If she's pulling this off throughout the lane phase and team fights, you're going to be in for a very rough time. Therefore, you will want to try to bait out her riposte in advance and then fight her afterwards. Without her riposte, she should be rather easy to deal with, so engage when it's down. Riven then has a ton of mobility and should be able to dodge a lot of your Darken Blades. If she can dodge these with her ability, she's going to be able to get on top of you afterwards and easily win trades. Play more carefully in this matchup and only go for Darken Blade hits when you think there's a high chance that you will land them. Then, of course, there's Urgot. This champion is another really strong lane bully that also has range. He will try to abuse you from range, and even if you do get on top of him, he is rather tanky. Just play this matchup carefully and only go for long trades if you are landing Darken Blade. For your item build, we start with either a Doran's Blade or a Doran's Shield. You'll want to grab the Doran's Blade if you feel comfortable against the enemy champion you're facing because it will give you more damage, a little bit of lifesteal to give you even more sustain when you're trading with the enemy. If however you're not comfortable in the matchup, you may want to opt for the Doran's Shield instead. You will have more regeneration and tankiness, so you'll have an easier time in the lane phase against champions you're not too great at fighting. Now as for your boot choices, we have the Ninja Tabis and the Merc Treads. This choice will usually depend on what sort of champion you are fighting in the top lane. If it's a champion that deals physical damage, you'll probably want those Ninja Tabis, but if they instead have a lot of magic damage or just crowd control, go for Merc Treads. Of course, as an example, if you're facing the only physical damage on the enemy team, you'll probably just want to pick up the Merc Treads over the Ninja Tabis, but basically, in short, take whatever will block the most damage for you. Now as for your core items, you want to grab the Black Cleaver, Death's Dance, and a Aatrox gauge. The Black Cleaver will give you a really nice health pool, 40 attack damage, and 20% cooldown reduction, helping with your high cooldowns. The passive on this item will also shred up to 24% of armor off your enemies, which will greatly increase your damage against tankier targets. The Phage portion of the item will also give you bonus movement speed for 2 seconds, helping you stick onto targets you're trying to kill. For the Death's Dance, you'll get 80 attack damage and 10% more cooldown reduction. The item also has a passive that makes you heal for 15% of the damage dealt, and 30% of damage taken is taken as a bleed effect instead over 3 seconds. This will give you just a little bit more survivability because you will die a little slower and usually have enough time to lifesteal from enemies to end up not dying in the end. We finish up the core by grabbing the Aatrox gauge because you will have a bigger health pool and also gain 50% of your base attack damage as bonus damage. When you take a bunch of damage, you'll also gain a shield for 3 seconds that is based off 75% of your bonus health and give you 30% tenacity for 8 seconds. This will greatly reduce the time you are in crowd controls, and you can move more often in fights. Now as for your item pool, we first have the Yumu's Ghost Blade. This is a pretty strong item on Aatrox because it will give you some nice attack damage, lethality, and you'll also hit the cooldown reduction cap. Activating the item will also increase your movement speed, so engaging will be a little bit easier. You could always pick up a Guardian Angel as well, which is a great offensive and defensive item. It will increase your damage by a little bit, but if you do die when the shield is available, you'll also resurrect and come back to life. If you instead needed some magic resist, you could always pick up the Spirit Visage. This item is incredibly strong on Aatrox because not only will you become tankier, but you'll also get increased healing, which is solid with all of your lifesteal. Of course, Aatrox could also pick up some armor as well against high physical damage teams. Randuin's Omen would be a really solid pick if the enemy has a bunch of critical strike chance, since it will reduce it by a percentage. Thornmail would then be a fantastic buy against champions that do have healing. It will apply Grievous Wounds, which will reduce the effectiveness of heals and also reflect damage back to the attacker. And that is everything I've got for the Aatrox guide. If you guys did enjoy, please make sure you thumb it up, and if you are new here, please subscribe. But other than that, thank you guys so much for checking out the video. I really do appreciate it, so take it easy, have a good day, and peace.